Welcome everyone to the first session. This is the retro session of the course Designing and Sustaining Competitive Advantage. So our idea here is to understand really what competitive strategy is about. My name is Dr. Brian Ruben and I'm going to be leading you in this very course. I want to encourage you to stay very focused, get your writing materials ready and be prepared to do some real thinking. You see, strategy is very important as you will discover while we make this journey. So I encourage you to take all that you'll be doing very seriously. That's where you'll be able to get maximum benefit. I believe you have your slide right before you, as I've got mine on my computer right now. Okay, so see, I've got my slide, and I hope you got yours because this slide is going to be guiding every discussion that we will have. Okay, so we start out. There's not going to be any waste of time, and I'm going to also have time to take questions and answer your questions. That way, we're certain that we all are on the same page and also um, there's gonna be a case study connected to this very introductory session. So we start right away, and we're moving right straight ahead in with understanding competitive strategy. So the first thing is I want us to start thinking about competition and um, how people think generally when it comes to competition, when it comes to strategy. There is a general way of thinking, you know, and I want us to start by reviewing that general way of thinking first of all. Okay, so what we find always is that traditionally people think of competition in terms of being the best. So you find that um, that bank or that motor company or that software company is focused on being the best company in the industry. And you see, this is very rampant even during awards, um, industry awards. You find companies that are receiving awards for being the best in industry. So you find that most of the times organizations have executives, managers are actually focused on being the best and they encourage everybody in the organization to be the best. And there's nothing wrong about trying to be the best, and it's okay to try to be the best, but that's not being strategic. You see, trying to be the best is a lousy way to competing, as you will get to understand. So we have another approach, which is what it should rather be. Now, somebody asked me, so why is it? What is wrong with being the best? If you are the best, that means you're gonna make more profit. You're gonna customers are gonna choose you because you are the best. Well, the reason is that there is no best. You cannot say this particular vehicle is the best. You can say this particular bank is the best. You can say this particular news station is the best. There is no best. It all depends on who is making the choice. What is good for Johnson may not be good for Matilda. That may not be good for Eze. You just gotta understand that it is about not being the best because you see, human beings are in different segments and their needs change as they evolve. The needs of a bachelor, for example, wouldn't exactly be the same need of the same person when he becomes married, and the need of a young medical doctor may not be the same as that of a professor. So you understand that people are different and their needs change as they grow. So there is no best really. Trying to be the best is a very lousy approach to competition. You rather have there's another approach, and that is the correct approach. Okay, it is competing to be unique, competing to be different. So that means you are bringing uniqueness, something new, something different, something innovative into the market. You remember Peter Drucker said there are only two duties of the enterprise, and he said it is innovation and marketing. So innovation is about being unique. The reason you are innovating is you want to bring a new way of solving problem, a new solution, or a new process of solving the problem. And that's what uniqueness is in terms of strategy. You see, uniqueness in terms of strategy is not about a particular activity or a particular product, as you will understand in the course of this course. The uniqueness is much deeper. All right, it is about the various elements, the micro activities that make up the whole process. That's where you find uniqueness that can result in a competitive advantage. Okay, so that said, the worst strategic error, the worst error you can make in competition in your business strategy is to approach the market the same way as your competitors. You see, when you approach the market the same way as your competitors, you are making a very serious mistake. That means you are competing with them on the same dimensions, on the same values. All right, that's the worst competitive error, the worst strategic error that you can ever make in your competition. What it means is if your competitors are competing on price, you also want to compete on price. What does this mean? Think about it. If they are approaching the market by trying to offer low price, you also want to offer low price. By offering low price, the implication is that there is nothing different about you. There's nothing unique about you. All right, they're offering a little more, than the rest of the people, and you're trying to do the same thing. That's a wrong approach to competition. You don't compete with other people on the same dimension and expect a different results. Very important. Okay, so let's move forward. I'm looking at the third slide right now, and that's dealing with competitive strategy. Looking at competitive actions that are open really to um, any organization, and that's really what I tried to explain initially. So you find a first competitive actions, and you have on the on my left side I have no strategy, a case where the company actually has no strategy. And this is it's common many times with some startups. All right, you find you just come to the market and there is no clearly defined approach, there's no clearly defined strategy, and you just there's nothing unique or special about you, and that doesn't mean that you may not be profitable, but you can be profitable as long as competition has not begun to intensify. If you, for example, discover a new area, imagine that in a new area, in a new estate, for example, where there are lots of wealthy people, all right, and it is just a pretty new estate, there are lots of wealthy people. You are the first to set up, you're the first to set up, probably, um, let's say, fast food or a new school, really. And because you are the first in this area, everybody's coming to you. But that's until more people begin to enter that same space and start competing with you. In that case, you must need a strategy, right? So you also have on the other end, you find those who are competing to be the best. I just explained that, right? And that doesn't work. What really works is you take, if you want to be competitively superior, if you want to have better results in your company, in your business, the idea is to take a different approach in process or in product. You're either going to take a different approach in process or in product. What that means is that you are going to either differentiate yourself in process or in product. If you do that, you would be taking the right approach to competition. So we move to the next slide, and let's even try to understand what does competition mean. Excuse me. What does competition mean? Very important. So what does competition even mean? Sometimes it's just not clear. I've been in, I work with business people all the time, and it's always appalling to me to realize that most executives, most managers don't truly understand strategy. It's a lot of confusion around it. See, they have this nice document that they prepared, and it's called, it has this beautiful design, and then they have a business strategy written on it. In That's, they call that their strategy, and then they have meetings which they call strategy meetings, right? And those things are not strategy meetings at all, they are just plannings. So there's a very big difference between strategy and a plan. Okay, so we start by trying to understand what strategy is not. If we know what it's not, probably help us to understand what it is. First of all, strategy is not aspirations. It is different from aspirations. Aspiration are things like we want to lead the market, we want to be the leading bank, all right? We want to be the leading, what was that, furniture company, okay? That's an aspiration, that's not a strategy. It's good to aspire, but to realize your aspiration, you need a strategy. The aspiration on its own is not a strategy. You also have another possibility where they say our strategy is to innovate. Innovate. We want to be innovative. See, we want to be the most innovative company in California. We want to be the most innovative company in Lagos. That's okay. It could be the most innovative company, but that's an aspiration. It's not a strategy. So you say our strategy is to grow by so and so percent annually. That's an aspiration. It's not a strategy. You also have to understand that strategy is not a particular action. It's more than one action. All right. So you can say our strategy is to merge. Merger is not a strategy. Okay. You see, our strategy is we want to acquire some small companies. That's not a strategy. That's one action. Strategy is usually more than one action. It is a configuration within the set of activities that stands you out. Very important. And in the course of this, I will introduce you briefly to what Professor Michael Porter described as a value chain, and that's going to pretty much help your understanding about what it means to be strategic. Okay, then you have strategy is not downsizing, it's not reorganizing, it's not restructuring. All of that and not strategy. They are a particular action. They could be good action depending on um, on the circumstances. Okay. Now you also know that strategy is not the same as your core values. Core values are important. All right. They give life and meaning to your aspirations. But core values is not the same as strategy. You see, we want to end hunger, world hunger. More people are hungry. We want to end hunger. That's why we are in this business. That could be a core value. See, sustainability is not a strategy. All right. So you understand these are not strategies, right? So in the next slide, let us consider what a strategy is. Okay, so I have um, I have an illustration here, and you're looking at your slide now too. So you'll see in this illustration on the right left hand side, I have a box, rectangular box with the label novel approach, and I have plus competitive advantages equals to strategy. Now that's what strategy is. Strategy is a unique approach, your unique approach to competition plus the competitive advantages on which that approach is based. That's what strategy is. It defines your distinctive or unique or different or novel approach to competition and the competitive advantages on which those approach is based. So strategy is fundamentally about making a different, a unique choice. So strategy defines how differently a company approaches the market. Very important, very simple, very succinct. It describes how differently a company approaches the market. It is a company's unique approach to competition and the competitive advantages on which the unique approach is based. That's what strategy is. So we now know what strategy is not, and we know what strategy is. That helps us a great deal. So, but that strategy. So, what is competitive strategy? You see, we just talked about strategy, but there is something called competitive strategy. What is it? Well, a competitive strategy defines how a company distinguishes itself in its competitive environment. It describes how a company differentiates itself in its competitive environment. Now, this is the this means the positioning of the company in its competitive environment involving all the functions. So in competitive positioning, which is what competitive strategy is about, you are looking at a position that cuts across all of the functions: production, distribution, logistics, and services, as you can see on the illustration on your slide. Now, very important. So let's now begin to talk about developing a strategy. Developing a strategy. Now, you use the tool provided for asking questions on the website here, and you ask you ask your questions, and we'll do well to respond to those questions. You as well go through the frequently asked questions, which questions have been asked by older students in the course of watching this video and taking this course, and you can find most of the answers also already provided for you. Now, developing a strategy. How do you develop a strategy? Let's look at the fundamental ideas. You want to develop your strategy. How do you do that? Let's look at the fundamental ideas. All right. The first thing is you want to understand that there are two fundamental questions that you ask when developing a strategy. Two fundamental questions that you must address when you're developing a strategy. The first one is the state of the industry. Every business exists within an industry. All right. So you want to understand that. Okay. Also, you want to also deal with what is called competitive positioning. In other words, the positioning of that organization within the industry. To position the business, it has to be an industry. So usually you start with the industry structure. So you have industry structure on one hand, and you have competitive positioning on the other hand. These are two fundamental questions you must resolve when you want to deal with develop a strategy. Okay, now that leads us to something which is called the industry structure analysis. So an industry structure can be analyzed, should be analyzed before you venture into a business. Many people don't do this. Are you surprised that 4 out of every 5 new businesses fail? Because those ideas are not taken very seriously, especially, like I said, by people who are just trying to step out in business. All right. And it's important that you do that. So you have industry structure analysis. All right. And what we have a tool that helps us here is the Professor Michael Porter's 5 forces of industry analysis. This is a tool he developed years ago that many has come to rely on to help them understand the state of an industry and how to position their company, their organization within an industry. So you have this Porter's 5 forces of industry analysis. At the center, um, you have the rivalry between competitors. competitive rivalry, we'll call it. And that is what happens between Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. So you understand they are in the same industry, the carbonated soft drink industry, all right. And of course, you have Dr. Pepe and all of the other ones. Right, right. So you have all of them here, and this rivalry that takes place between all of them. Imagine in the in the banking industry or in the telecom industry, you have several companies who are after the same customers, all right? They're after the same customers and after the same value within the industry. Now, it's saying after the same customers, I'm a bit reluctant to actually say that they are actually after the same customers because you see there are different customers within the same industry. Why? Because people have different sets of needs. All right, it is the job of the strategist to understand the industry, and that's the reason for industry analysis, right? Okay, so you have this rivalry. This is all that takes place with all of the promotion, all of the cutting of price, all of the trade shows, and all of the things that organizations do to get value within an industry. It's called the rivalry among competitors. But that's not all, because you see, in every industry, there is a certain level of value that is there. Imagine in the airline industry, it could be a $200 billion industry. That means every company within the industry can only have a portion of this 200 billion and nothing more. All right, it has to be somehow distributed, amongst all of the players. Now, the idea, the pursuit of every company within the industry is to get as much value, as much share of that 200 billion than others. All right, that's always the focus of every company within the industry. So you understand that that's always the focus. That's always the focus. Okay, so it leads to a rivalry. All right, companies are making choices and decisions to make sure they get as much value as they can. It's a rivalry, it's a struggle. All right, it's a fight. But that's not all. That's not all that determines what is possible. If you have $200 billion in an industry, you can only share $200 billion. All right, but what if there is another factor that even reduces this $200 that you can control? Now imagine there are 10 companies and there's $200 billion. They can all struggle to get their own share of $200. What if something outside the control of these 5 companies reduces the $200 billion to $150 billion? Now they can only have access to $150 billion. You see the point? Now what if something else can further reduce what is possible? All right. So you look at a case like new entrants. So an industry is booming, everything is going on nice, everybody wants to take a piece, get his own piece of the cake. So because it's very progressive, more companies, more people want to enter and start doing the same business. That is called the trend of new entrants, and is one of the forces that can determine the profitability or otherwise of an industry. The trade of new entrants. Now, the trade of new entrants can be high, the trade of new entrants can be low, depending on certain factors. Imagine a situation where you have a nice government policy that say, okay, if you enter into this industry, you don't pay tax for 5 years. That makes it attractive. All right. So people want to get into the industry because they're not going to be paying tax for a period of 5 years. So within this period, they're going to be able to recoup most of their investments. All right. Of course, this will depend on other factors. All right. But that's just an example of what could lower the barrier to entry in an industry. All right. Now, when the barrier to entry is low, the implication is that more and more people will want to enter the industry. Now, you also have a situation where the switching cost is low. What does that mean? It means that if you acquire machines, for example, and go into this industry, you can also utilize those machines and start doing operating in another industry if you ever decide. That means the switching cost from that industry to another industry is going to be low for you. And if it's low for you, now that makes it easier for you to say, okay, we can try this business. If it doesn't work, we can easily get out without losing much. You see that? Now, especially in a case where you can use the same equipment you have to serve another set of customers in a different industry. You can easily think about that, and that could help people make up their minds to enter into that industry. But you also have cases where the barrier to entry can be pretty high, maybe as a result of government policy. The government could say, um, we don't want foreigners to operate in this industry. Now, that means there could be foreigners who actually have a stronger competitive strength, but they can't enter into that industry. So that kind of protective of that industry. All right. So because of a government policy, or maybe switching cost is high. Once you get into this industry, if things don't work out, you can't use your equipment, your machines for any other thing. Switching cost is pretty high. Or the cost of even venturing in is pretty high. Think about an industry like the airline industry. To start an airline business is not very easy, and um, it doesn't even look very attractive when you look at all of the things, the action of labor unions, and all of that that really affect profitability in that industry. That's why the billionaire Richard Branson once said that there's only one way to be a millionaire in the airline industry. He said, you start out by being a billionaire. He was speaking from his experience actually, because I can tell you several companies that have got their fingers burnt operating in that industry. All right, several, including Donald Trump. Many never actually knew that Trump once had an airline that just didn't turn out right. And you have several older people like that, um, uh, that have operated in that industry, and they just didn't turn out well. Okay, so now that's about the threat of new entrants, right? Threat of new entrants, which is determined by the barriers to entry into that industry. If the barrier is low, more people can enter. If the barrier is high, less people can enter. You see, less people entering means that there will be, the value, the value in the industry, um, uh, can be retained and shared by the players within that industry. But that's not all. That's on the one side. There is another factor that can actually reduce what is possible in the industry. Now imagine a situation where, say, to produce any value, to produce any make any product, or any service, really, you require supplies. All right, there are raw materials that you have to utilize to produce something. Now, in some cases, if the suppliers, if the suppliers have some tremendous bargaining power, that could affect the profitability. Imagine the airline industry again. All right, you understand, to acquire the airplanes, that's pretty expensive. And then you talk about paying pilots, pretty expensive. All right, so suppliers have some real, strong bargaining power in the airline industry, for example. And there are other industries like that, where suppliers, they just, it's just pretty high. All right, they have strong bargaining power. This usually happens when there are not many of them, or when the capital required to produce whatever it is that they supply is pretty high. You see, the suppliers themselves are also in an industry, right? They are an industry. So, that said, the bargaining power of suppliers can reduce the profitability in an industry and make a rather profitable industry a lousy one. Okay. Now, you also have the threat of substitutes. Substitutes are all the products or services that can provide the same value, that yours provides. So you can imagine I can either drink a Coke or decide to drink water. All right. So that's very important. You understand um, the power of suppliers of substitutes. All right. So I remember a situation in Nigeria when I got told that story during one of my master class in Nigeria, where a local product called Zobo, lots of people were beginning to buy that because carbonated soft drinks, their prices rather increased. So you wonder what's, so Zobo became an alternative and people were buying it and drinking it, all right? And the response of those carbonated soft drink makers, they went to the northern Nigeria where the Zobo is grown, and they bought all of the stuff just for the purpose of ensuring that, so the people who are making the Zobo and selling couldn't find Zobo to make again, and that way, that tactics helped them to destroy that competition that was coming from substitutes. You see, so substitutes have the power to reduce competition, to reduce value in an industry. So you want to find a way to deal with substitutes. So when you're thinking about an industry and thinking about the business, you are looking at all of these factors. You're looking at the threat of new entrants. You're looking at the bargaining power of buyers. You are looking at the threat of substitutes. You are also looking at the bargaining power of I've talked about the bargaining power of suppliers. Now you also talk about the bargaining power of buyers. See, both are important. The bargaining power of buyers. In other words, the buyers, the people that buy from you, can have tremendous bargaining power. Imagine you are supplying to some buyers who actually buy in large quantity. You're supplying to a buyer like the Walmarts. They've got some strong bargaining power. All right. In Africa, you're supplying to ShopRite. They've got some strong bargaining power because they are pretty huge, pretty big, and they also one of their key strengths is the ability to get these things at much lower rates. So if you have such suppliers, chances are you're gonna be losing money because they have strong bargaining power. So when you are thinking about the industry, you're not just thinking about the people who are creating the same value as you are. All right. So you're not just thinking about Coke and Coca-Cola. All right. Now you're thinking about all of the other things, the trend of new entrants, those that can enter into the same industry with you and start doing the same thing that you do, and then you're thinking about um, the suppliers who supplies to this industry. How strong are they? All right. You're also thinking about the buyers. Do they have strong bargaining powers? Of course, you're thinking about substitutes also. So this helps you understand um, the structure of an industry. Now, this is one aspect. This is one aspect. All right. And we're gonna take a break. And when we come back, we will deal with the other. So before we take a break, a few things that I would like to point out for you, all right, is so when we come back, we deal with the competitive positioning. So very quickly, key points for industry analysis. Now, you need to understand that the fundamental long-term potential of any business is determined by the strength of the five forces. These five forces we mentioned determines the fundamental long-term potentials of any business. All right. So you need to put this into consideration because these these five forces, all right, their strengths. In other words, think about the fact that the bargaining power of suppliers is high. Their strength is what determines the long-term potential of an industry, whether the industry will continue to grow or it will decline. Very important. So you need to understand the five forces very well, all right, to enable you make sound business decisions about strategy and competition. Also, the mix of the five forces will depend on the industry. Okay, what that means is that how the five forces interact, okay, whether the threat to new, the threat the threat of new entrants is high or low, and whether the bargaining power of suppliers is high or low. All right, the mix of these five forces will depend on the industry. In other words, how it is in the pharmaceutical industry may not be how it will be in the airline industry. That may not be how it will be in the hotel industry, all right, and hospitality industry. So the mix depends on the industry. But the profitability, see, the overall strength of the five forces determines the profitability or otherwise of the industry. Now that's very clear to understand. Now, thirdly, industry analysis is a starting point of any strategy. If you formulate a strategy without clearly understanding the industry, the strategy can be effective. And thirdly, you want to focus your attention on the significant force. See, the force is usually varying in strength. The bargaining power of buyers could be stronger than the bargaining power of suppliers in a particular industry. For example, in the airline industry, the suppliers have a pretty much bargaining power. The buyers really don't have much of a bargaining power, but they are price sensitive. The buyers are pretty price sensitive. And the same thing also applies even to the hospitality industry, all right, in hotels, really. So you find that the buyers, depending on who is paying, if a company is making a payment, for example, to reserve a hotel for a staff that is traveling, the staff may not bother with what the company is paying. But because the company actually is going to be buying large, buying big, maybe it's a long-term customer, again, that could give the company a strong bargaining power. You see that? So it varies with the industries. But what you do is to focus your attention on the significant force in your own case. In your case, the significant force could be substituted. So you focus attention on the significant force because that's what you need to deal with. If you don't deal with it, it will take profit away from you. You need to find how to deal with the most significant force in your industry. If there are two forces that are very significant, you do the same thing. All right. And again, you watch for industry change because the industries change. Technology changes industry. All right. Human needs change industry. As people evolve, industries change. All right. So you need to watch for industry change because no strategy is static. Is dynamic because the environment is dynamic. See, strategy is about mastering the environment. It's the art of a business general in the pursuit of business objectives and goals. It is approach to subduing the environment to be able to get the result he sets out to accomplish. That's why successful business people don't complain because they know if they fail it's because their strategy isn't effective. Very important. We're gonna take a break right now, and when we come back, we start dealing with competitive positioning.